Hi everyone, my name is Cam Camila Lesage, and the name of my TED Talk is Talking to the Stranger. I would like to introduce my thoughts on the world we live in today. We often see the world, I would say many of us see the world in black and white, simply in terms of good and evil. That division, I would say, is pretty reassuring. It's effective. It definitely allows us to systemically sort people into us and them, right and wrong, which I think all comes naturally. But the world is not comprised of just black and white. It's a spectrum. We are all like different hues, and people can, and often do, shift and work on themselves. I have just one core point today. Prejudice and closed-mindedness do not build community safety. Instead, they increase social divisions and weaken the community strength. Of course, objective good and objective evil exist today in our world and have always. But let's reflect for a moment. Are we perhaps assigning the labels of good and evil to people solely based on how closely they align with our specific political or religious beliefs? This leads to my critical question. When was the last time you had a real conversation with someone who doesn't look like you or think like you? When was the last time you spoke with a stranger? Not to correct them or to educate them, but simply to communicate, to laugh, and to bond. If that moment is hard to recall, we have to consider the reason. Is it merely based off prejudice? Or is it something more powerful? Is it the fear of being viewed negatively within your own group? Where the division takes root. A divide is growing and it's becoming sharper. Social science researchers call this phenomenon affective polarization. This means we don't just disagree with the other side, we are increasingly required to dislike them. The conflict is no longer just about differing views, it's an erosion of mutual trust. Our tendencies to divide people stems from our biological makeup. Yeah, the human brain is hardwired to determine who belongs to our in-group and who doesn't. In the past, of course, recognizing your tribe was a matter of survival, life or death. Those inside the tribe received protection and resources. Those outside were viewed as threats. That primal characteristic is still active today, which makes sense. However, this tribalism is further fueled by a psychological process known as confirmation bias. We don't seek the truth. We seek evidence that support the views we already hold. When we become closed-minded, we don't just shut the door on new ideas. We close the windows to listening only to voices that echo our very own. At this stage, walls are erected. They don't just separate people, they separate stories and brains. When we live in a perceived world of black and white, it's natural to fear any color that dares to oppose us. The deepest challenge doesn't come from complicated things, it comes from simple human stories. This brings me to the topic of The Stranger on the Shelf. I've closely studied youth books that have challenged society today. Among the books I investigated, the author simply gave a young reader opportunity to understand an identity of the world that has yet predetermined for them. This wasn't necessarily advocacy. It was a simple reflection of condition, yet the response illustrates a key point. Consider the powerful examples of these strangers. My first book, All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Keeley. This book forced us to listen to two sides of a story involving police brutality and race, and it challenged us to look beyond tribal loyalty and confront the ugly truth of systematic racism and bystander silence. My second book, Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, gave a voice to a protagonist, Yadriel, who is a gay transgender brujo, fighting his own family's traditional boxes. This book challenged me because it dared to celebrate intersectional identity, not merely tolerate it, like I'm sure it did to many. Our Diversity Makes Us Stronger by Elizabeth Cole, my third book, is an explicit celebration of human differences, challenging the ideas that conformity equals community safety. Now, how do we break out of this loop? Not through judgment, but through conversations. Social psychology offers the contact hypothesis. Prejudice diminishes when members of different groups must work together toward a common goal. However, I propose the stranger hypothesis. Our common goal is much simpler than any project. It is the simple fact of shared human community. We deny commonality with others because of the cost of discovering it is often too high, which is fair, understandable. It risks undermining the approval of our own in-group. But consider this. I once sat down with someone who had a whole different political view than I did. And instead of debating politics, we talked about family, friends, school, our favorite TV shows. And that person stopped being the stereotypical representative of the opposing political party group to me. Instead, I just seen them as another human being who I was connecting with. We divide not because the stranger is telling their story, but because we're refusing to hear it. The strength of community that stems from social bonding and the desire to communicate in good faith with those who we don't consider our people will always prove stronger than the strength of any tribal affiliation. My final challenge to you all, the one indispensable intervention. Find a stranger whose ideas you're certain are very different from your own. Do not go teach them or try to fix them. Go to find a common ground with your own shared humanity. If you cannot speak to a living stranger today, then converse with a stranger on the shelf. Pick the book you know that will shake your personal beliefs, ideologies, religious beliefs, whether it's a book like All American Boys, The Cemetery Boys, or any book that holds an unfamiliar voice. Knock on that cover if you must. Knock on it because you want the opportunity to hear what's inside. The simplest act is listening to the stranger, whether that's an individual or the pages of a book. Listening to the stranger is also the most radical act of bravery we can commit in our divided world. Because in doing so, we prove that we do not live in a black and white world. Thank you.